Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be illustrating the proper techniques in using a pipette, a 10 ml pipette in this instance, using a volumetric flask, 250 mils. And to do that, we're going to do a demonstration where we take some stock solution of crystal violet, take 10 mils of it, and dilute to 250 mils. So let's begin with the 10 ml pipette. I am right-handed. So when I use the pipette, I will hold it in my left hand, and this is really the only acceptable way of holding a pipette is with 3 fingers and a thumb, with your index finger in the ready position above. You use a pipette bulb. That's going to help us pull liquid into the solution. All right? Improper technique would involve this. It doesn't give you enough dexterity. It gives you very poor control of the pipette. It really is important that you hold it between your fingers and your 3 fingers and your thumb. Of course, if you're left-handed, it would be the exact opposite. So let's start. We're going to take some of the stock solution. We're going to rinse the container which we are going to pipette out of. Just put a small amount in. We're assuming the glassware is dirty. It's always nice to assume the worst. That way you're ensured of the results you end up with. I'm going to rinse the pipette. So again, holding it in the proper fashion, my left hand fingers. Pipette bulb, fully squeezed with my right hand. Pipette resting on the bottom of the beaker at a bit of an angle. And then just with a modest amount of pressure, I'm able to seal the pipette bulb onto the top of the pipette. I don't need to fill the pipette up entirely, though I do need some liquid in there to rinse, to ensure that if there's any salts or other solutions from previous students, I can discard it and into my waste container. Generally, rinses are done 2 or 3 times to ensure that washing or rinsing of the glassware is complete. And again, notice that I always hold it the same way. Left hand, 3 fingers, index finger, resting on the bottom of the beaker at a bit of an angle, and I drop a little bit of liquid. And again, I run it horizontally, running the solution back into the pipette, and with rotation, I thoroughly wet the glassware and rinse out any contaminants. For this demonstration, I'll only rinse twice, but it's generally a good idea to rinse all glassware 3 times before you use it. Now, I make the assumption that both the beaker and the pipette were dirty, and when I place the pipette into my stock solution, it's now contaminated. That may or may not be the case, but for safety or for quality of results, I'm going to assume that I have contaminated that material. You'll notice that I never ever pipette out of the stock solution. Introducing a dirty pipette into our stock solution will ruin the entire solution for everyone. I always pipette out of a secondary container. I'll do that again. I'll help myself too. Enough liquid so that I can pipette a full 10 mils of my solution into my volumetric flask. Now that brings us to our volumetric flask. Our volumetric flask, they come in various sizes. We typically use 100 ml and 250 ml volumetrics in this class. They're bulbous shaped, long neck, and each one will be individually marked with a small scribe on the neck which indicates, in this instance, 250.0 mils, assuming that the solution is totally full and the meniscus just touches the top of this mark. Again, I assume that this container was used to hold a different solution in a prior lab and could be contaminated. We will be diluting our solution with water, so I will go ahead and rinse to clean our glassware with a small amount of water. Again, 3 rinses being the absolute minimum. It's always much more efficient to have many small rinses than 1 large rinse. But when cleaning glassware, as I say, 3 is the magic number. The cap that fits on this flask, we marked with 250 mils, and that too should be clean. This one looks relatively clean, but again, previously used for a different solution should be rinsed as well. Now I'm ready to transfer my solution, my crystal violet solution into the volumetric flask. So with a clean, rinsed pipette, I repeat the process. I didn't mention this earlier, but it's appropriate to mention it now. The 10 ml pipette also will have a mark on the neck, and which, when you bring the liquid up to it, the bottom of the meniscus should just come in contact with the top of this line. Doing that will ensure that you are dispensing exactly 10.00 mils of solution. So, between my fingers and my thumb, pipette bulb firmly pushed onto the top of the pipette. And there we go. Now, sometimes, initially this can be a bit of a frustrating process, by which you're pulling liquid up from the bottom and you're slow to get your finger in place and the solution drops down. It's not a hardship. You just place the pipette vertically, pipette bulb on, and you can pull up a few mils of extra liquid. Now this is why this technique of holding it between your fingers and your thumb is appropriate. By rotating your fingers in this manner here, you can break the seal between your index finger and the top of the pipette. That allows a small amount of air to bleed into the pipette, giving you very gentle control on the pipette. By slowly rotating and having your eye parallel to or the exact height of the mark, you can get very good control of the pipette so that the meniscus just brushes the top of the line. Once done, make sure I'm not hanging a drop. I lightly tap it against the container. I insert it into the volumetric flask and let the solution fall naturally into the flask. Now each pipette is calibrated before we receive them. They are intended to have a small amount of material still left in the pipette. Don't know if the camera can pick that up. You can see I've let it drain. There's approximately a centimeter and a half of liquid in the pipette, and that's intended. If you just hold the tip of your pipette against the glassware so that you're not hanging a drop, leave it there for a second or so, 2-3 seconds, and that's my complete dispense of 10 mils. Do not use the pipette to clean out the rest of the pipette into the volumetric flask. If you do, you'll end up with more than 10 mils in an uncalibrated amount. So it is intended to leave a small amount left in the pipette tip. Now, I can be relatively certain that I've dispensed 10.00 mils of solution into my volumetric flask. And now what I'll be doing is I'll be adding water up to the mark so that it just brushes the top of the mark. Using deionized water in this instance, you can take off the spigot, makes the process go a little faster, and fill the flask. It's not an uncommon mistake. Students are surprised that because of the shape of the flask, it's relatively slow initially, but as the container narrows, the water level rises quite quickly. So you have to be careful not to overshoot. Now there's a couple ways you can proceed here, carefully for certain. You can put your fine fitting back onto the wash bottle. And what I'd prefer to do is when I get to this point, quite close, I'm within 3-4 milliliters or millimeters of the cap, I take a clean pasture pipette and I add it dropwise. And then you can be very, very precise with the addition of your water. And again, I'm looking to add just enough so the meniscus of the solution just touches the top of the mark on the neck. Now, I don't know if the camera can pick this up. That's 250 mils from here down. It's inevitable that you will end up with a small amount of water here. Now this water volume isn't a lot, but it will change the total volume here. So what I often get students to do, it's not very subtle, using a bit of Kim wipe or paper towel, you can, it's a little trick, not tricky, it's a little cumbersome. Try to remove as much water as you can out of the neck. Cap goes on, Should give a nice snap, and then I'm ready to mix. It looks well mixed now, but it's, again, always a good idea to ensure that the solution is thoroughly mixed. A lot of the purple solution initially was here, and this may be very dilute. So, to mix, 2 hands always, cap on firmly, invert, shake. And it's the inversion and the shaking that allows the air bubbles to agitate the solution to ensure that the solution is thoroughly mixed. And again, 3 is the magic number, but 4 certainly isn't a question. And we've prepared a 250 ml solution of a diluted solution of our original crystal solution.